Welcome to With All Due Respect. This is a podcast for women over 40 who are looking for sane, frank advice about their health and wellness, especially through and after menopause. I'm Amanda Thebe, a personal trainer and nutrition coach, and the author of the best-selling book, Menopocalypse: How I Learned to Thrive During Menopause and How You Can Too. I'd love you to join me every week as I chew the fat with some fab guests on hot topics that directly impact you. I also know the power of conversation is lost, and there's nothing better than sitting down for a natter with your mate and putting the world to rights. And that's exactly what I'll be doing with this podcast. We'll really get to know my guests, warts and all. I've made it my mission to help you by exploding a few myths and presenting you with plain, simple facts. These inspiring conversations will hopefully empower you to be a healthy, strong, resilient bitch, just like me. Before we get started, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review, and then visit me at amandathebe.com. And now let's get started on today's show. Welcome back to With All Due Respect with me, your host, Amanda Thebe. And today I have Bros Who Lift On. I'm excited to have Spencer Nadolsky, who is medical director of Joint Sequence, but is an obesity, lipid, and meme specialist.
That's right.
And his brother, Karl Nadolsky, endocrinology physician, board certified in endocrinology and obesity medicine. Thanks, guys, coming on the show. Glad to have you here.
Anything for you.
All right. So, okay. Do you hear that, everyone? Anything from me? So anything you just ask and we'll get it. So I've been on your show, Docs Who Lift, on your podcast show, which is such a great meeting of you both. It's so great because you've blended your passions for medicine, which we need to talk about, and talk about why it's important to have the combination of medicine and lifestyle together. We don't hear about that enough unless it starts to, in my mind, verge into the woo world, right? That's what. So, okay. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How do you do this, and who decides who's going to speak first? Who's the oldest?
Except I'm the oldest. Spencer followed in my footsteps.
Right. And so he copies everything you do.
Kind of, except that then he takes it a whole nother level of, he's a lot better entrepreneur than I am. And a lot better at doing memes.
A little girthier as well, but
Yeah, I'm definitely girthier. You're tall and
she's like, what are you guys
No. Because girth is a place I don't want to go to with you two. I just don't know what type of podcast you think this is.
We usually on our podcast, one of us gets fired every podcast.
Yeah, we get fired. One of us will get fired. Maybe from this podcast as well.
I always think Carl's like, so we have this group that we occasionally jump into on Instagram called the Quack Watch. I think Abby started it, and because we're always like, oh, fucking hell, is this happening again? And is this real? And we roped you two into it. And I always think that first thing that happens is when we post something in that group, Spencer responds and goes, lol.
LOL.
LOL. And then Carl comes in and goes, well, actually, and then is all sensible.
Yeah, I think on our podcast, I think Spencer's, I don't know. I mean, I suppose we kind of mix it up a little bit. I kind of sometimes think of Spencer as the lead host and the color commentator, and I'm more of like the dry analyst, like in a football game, but then we get each other going and still end up both getting fired. So, whatever. Yeah. You can just point questions to one of us because you know us well enough.
Yeah.
We do have our differences, right? I mean, so I have my, endocrinology specific training and expertise. Spencer has some more broader stuff because he was family medicine. I did internal medicine, which is adult, a little bit more complicated adult care, whereas he's a little bit broader, has some experiences, with kids and stuff. So.
You've definitely just said I'm better than him.
Well, maybe for a few things. He's definitely got more experience on the broader level for a lot of other things. I'll defer to him to a lot of things. I kind of focus these days. So, yeah.
Yeah. Any comeback on that, Spencer? Or are you just going to let him? You're just going to let him attack you?
I'm tall.
I don't know. I just got my hip replaced. I have 2 new hips. So yeah, you're kind of screwed.
So actually, can we talk about that? Because you just seem to have this miraculous recovery from a hip operation. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to be like laid up for weeks. And you were like going for a walk and stuff.
Yeah, I'm literally 2 weeks out today. And I'm not using my walker, and it feels pretty darn good right now. I mean, the credit's not for me. Certainly, I think, being in good shape all my life, having good muscles, all that stuff.
Having a third leg, that helps as well. So.
That was on the X-ray.
So man, it's like, fired? We're getting fired from this thing. Look at
anyways, but the surgeons do great work these days, and hips are really good, compared to some of the other joint replacements that people get. So, it's unfortunate that I'm so young and had to get hip replacement. I will blame my dad for those genetics. And Spencer doesn't seem to have those issues, but I am very fortunate to have, a great surgeon who does an approach that's good for, someone younger, athletic, and hips are just good these days. So, I'm a little bit lucky.
And you're doing well. So that's good.
Yeah,
it's good to see. Okay. So first of all, I want to ask you guys, why did you start the podcast, Docs Who Lift? What was the overarching message that you wanted to get out there? Go for it, Spencer.
Yeah, the gist is we've been on many, many podcasts and having questions all the time to us. We're like, okay, why don't we just make our own podcast and just answer the questions that we want to talk about and then have fun doing it in general? Because we've been on so many podcasts in the past to where it was like, all right, let's just do it ourselves. People ask us these questions. Let's just answer it the way we want and in a fun way where we have our own little banter and just chat back and forth. Our expertises are, obesity medicine, endocrinology. I did family medicine and lipidology. So we're cardiometabolic and fitness in general. So that's the Docs Who Lift, because we have a big background in lifting weights that kind of propelled our careers for athletics, but also we use it a lot in medicine. In fact, we published a paper last year about combining a gym in with a physician's clinic, a clinic, the gym clinic idea. So we're very passionate about using exercise as medicine type of thing and lifting weights specifically because it's not very well.
Yeah. We're shills for lifting weights. We think it's very important and not enough people do it.
Docs Who Lift.
But also, with you guys, our episode with you guys is very popular because we like to battle myths. There's just so much quackery out there and BS that people are falling for because our healthcare system's not great. And so then people feel scorned and they do that. And so this is another way that we can do it. And I'll say, going back to some of our differences is I would never do anything technologically advanced on my own. I am not good at technology. Spencer always has been. So that's always been,
I'm a millennial.
I always rely on him because he's a millennial. I'm a Gen Xer. So
Gen X.
I would never do it on my own.
It's real.
So, yeah. So he does all that stuff. So luckily, when he was like, yeah, we should just throw around. I was like, yeah, sure, fine. As long as you can do it. God knows I can't do it.
Yeah, just tell me, well, I'm a Gen Xer and managed to work it out. So I think if you're good enough to be an endocrinologist, I'm pretty sure you could have done it without Spencer. But anyway.
We do better as a team.
You do. And I actually am a great believer in education through humor because I believe that people retain it better when it's delivered in a particular way. There's nothing worse. Yeah. And I talk about this from my menopause stuff. You know how dry and boring that stuff is. And when you read about it, it's like, oh God, tell me now. But if you can deliver it with some type of a humor or relatable aspect to it, then people are going to listen and remember, right? So it works.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So, listen, I actually want to touch on one of the questions I was going to ask you both is sort of about the idea that, we know resistance training is so important, right? And I actually was looking at some back and forth that Spencer was having on Dr. Peter Attia's post today, actually. And so I find it really difficult in the social media world where we've got doctors that obviously don't know a lot about exercise and nutrition and resistance training specifically. And then you've got all of the wellness wankery people out there that are like, well, I never need medicine because I'm so fit. Mm-hmm. And the meeting in the middle, I feel has been overrun with these zealots and people that will push into the pseudoscience, right? So one of the questions I had for you is how do people disconcern? Who is the people to follow and who's talking about this and giving real evidence and how you can spot those red flags. But I actually also want that to include about the resistance training part of it and how doctors can talk about that ethically when it's something they don't even really always understand.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And you wrote a paper on it. So
yeah, so I just tweeted out more doctors need to prescribe resistance training. Now, the argument against that is that the doctors don't know how to prescribe it. At the very least, just recommend resistance training and don't recommend against it. Because what you'll see is that they'll either not even say anything about exercise, or they'll just say exercise in general. Or they'll say, go run, don't lift. They'll specifically say, don't lift weights. And it's like, what is going on?
Which makes that makes no sense. And by the way,
but you see that
we've
often.
Published on this in MedPage Today several years ago, where we talked about, lifestyle, diet and exercise, et cetera, are always absolutely first line in every single mainstream evidence-based clinical practice guideline to recommend to patients. So it's not like physicians are foreign to the concept that everyone needs to be exercising in some form, but also in any relevant guideline, which, we're involved in a lot of the cardiometabolic ones, it always talks about resistance training. I mean, it's specifically cardiometabolic, like obesity, diabetes, heart disease type health stuff, and then down to, more maybe in my realm is osteoporosis and bone health. Resistance training is very much first line. So it's not like it should be foreign. So all physicians at least need to support it. But you're right, like Spencer said, not every physician is going to be comfortable giving a real exercise prescription. But we do need to do better in our system for making sure because there's not really coverage for exercise specialists. And then they end up seeing who knows whom. Sometimes personal trainers are great. Sometimes they're,
you never know what you're going to get.
Sometimes they're quacks.
Not a lot of standardization. Not a great standardization in that realm.
So,
but like,
it's unregulated. Personal training is unregulated, right?
So it gets even worse with personal trainers because, like you alluded to, there are carnivore doctors and all these other doctors who are using research. They post a PubMed link, and based off of the abstract, it's really hard to know if you don't understand study methodology. Like, this person's full of it. How would you know unless you're trained in it? So here you have a doctor, an authority figure. They have an MD behind their name, and they have a good following. And they're posting a study that says, cholesterol is not bad for you, and because of the methodology of how they did it. And how are you going to know? It's really, here's what we had a red flag. Didn't we have a red flag podcast? That if something sounds like almost too good to be true, or a little bit against conventional,
or a little extreme, like
just
totally against the grain,
it shouldn't just be like that person's a quack. It should just be like your spidey senses or it should be popping up. You should be going, I don't know. And then you should probably look to a few other places to confirm. That's the gist. It's really hard to develop.
Really hard.
Because how are you going to know? So that's what everybody says. So like Peter Tia, for instance, could say something and like this guy, he has a lot of experts on his very renowned and revered experts on his podcast. So clearly there's people that think he's smart and whatever. So he says something. How are you going to know that that's BS? You're going to take it as gospel.
Right. Which is a problem. And nobody should do that with anybody. They shouldn't do it with us necessarily or anybody else. They should evaluate it, and that's the problem. The more extreme it seems, especially when it's extreme away from what the mainstream, sort of experts are suggesting, that should be a red flag. And so, there are a lot of very renowned experts who don't do any social media.
Well, I was going to say they're too busy working.
The ones writing the clinical practice, doing the research, doing the clinical practice guidelines, doing the education for other doctors. We try to do this. We try to kind of do both, which is time consuming, but most of them aren't doing that stuff. And so to some degree, you got to be a little careful about it. If you're listening to podcasts and stuff, you got to see, okay, what are these guys? Where are they coming from? People should look into things like their training, board certification, et cetera, because I still don't know if Peter T is specialized.
No, he's
in
not
anything.
board certified.
He claims to be an age management expert, but he's not certified in any, I don't know. Yeah, he's not certified in anything. So it's like, so he doesn't have any training expertise. And I'm not dogging him per se. I'm just saying this is a red flag. And then also when people who are specifically specialized in something, but they somehow are making huge waves in some other realm of specialty. Huberman, Jason Fung, Gundry, who's the because he's the cardiothoracic surgeon. Who's the neurosurgeon, Spencer, that went down quackery?
That was that Cruz guy. The Cruz guy. That was like 10 years ago. I never hear from him.
I always think about him.
Well, Dr.
He was the grain guy.
Wheat belly.
Perry Muddle.
Wheat belly. Yeah. He's a
Wheat belly is Davis.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Grain brain.
William Davis is a cardiologist. He's a grain belly or wheat belly. And
anyways,
Perry Muddle.
Or Dr. Oz. You're right. So when people are, they should be specialty and have expertise in something that they should be helping real people with. But then they went off and somehow they're making tons of money by having extremist views on something that's not their specialty. That's a huge red flag. Doesn't mean they're wrong per se, but it's would be
like me or my brother going and talking about neurosurgery.
Yeah, or rheumatology.
Rheumatology, but not even. I'm saying
you maybe a little, but that's we would have someone on our podcast to talk about that.
Something outside of even our broad,
like psychiatry is something you wouldn't touch on. You wouldn't touch on psychiatry, would you? Because you would be like,
we would ask a real psychiatry expert.
Yeah.
Now, granted, family medicine, I do get trained pretty well in psychiatry, but going beyond just mild to moderate depression, anxiety, that's where
but you would never make claims.
No, I would never.
You would never make extreme claims. Even in endocrine, I'm an endocrinologist. I still would prefer to have other endocrinologists who are have their real focus on some of the others more specific areas within endocrine, rather than, just myself saying everything about adrenal disease. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm pretty good at everything.
So what you're getting into the language though, too, of it. Cause like when you see people make very concrete statements, like
specific,
like I'm trying to think of like cholesterol does not cause heart disease, that type of thing, when it's like, wait, what? What are you talking about? Those types of, as opposed to like, well, there's more to the story than just cholesterol. Okay, that's not unreasonable to say.
That's true. Yeah.
But that's not what you said.
But to go completely against the grain of mainstream evidence-based recommendations to make a name for themselves, to make waves and probably sell something, those are all red flags.
I think so too. And one of the other things I think is like a patient or like the client is that these people will also use appeal to authority fallacy. And it's like, you can't question them because they're the doctor. And I think that to me is one of the biggest red flags.
The opposite of that too.
I was going to say, it goes even more. It goes into the pedigree. So, this doctor goes to Harvard or went to Oxford or whatever. So then it gets even further. And it's like, I don't give a shit where they went.
Right. And yet all their mentors are probably going, get this guy out of here. So they're being like a quack.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
Or even the whole, Hyman at Cleveland Clinic.
Perfect example.
Got, Mark Hyman, who all the doctors, all the real experts at Cleveland Clinic, and I've talked to a lot of them from endocrine, cardiology, and beyond, they are embarrassed that Cleveland Clinic decided to open this up because it's a money-making operation. They are so embarrassed by that. Mostly Cleveland Clinic doesn't sue me right now, but I promise every single physician I've ever met from Cleveland Clinic is embarrassed that they do that, because they have real global leading experts in a lot of different things there. And then they have this guy who basically says that evidence-based medicine isn't right, and he just takes cash and does stuff.
It diminishes their name, honestly. It's kind of
it's bad for them. Yeah.
I feel like what the people, these leading doctors, there's a few that like in the menopause world, like Sarah Gottfried and stuff like that, who just say nonsense all the time. And then it's so clearly nonsense, and yet she uses the Harvard name behind her and stuff. But what I see is that, there is a gap between like traditional medicine and then applying lifestyle solutions that you said that you're trying to fill. And then what's happened is this functional movement. And I hate that, because all the training I do is like functional movement training. And now I never say the word functional anymore because they've pissed all over it,
It's a big marketing thing. That's so Mark Hyman at Cleveland Clinic, functional medicine. It's like, what do you mean functional medicine? And then they come up, the way they describe it is I've taken marketing classes and all sorts of courses, and I'm like, oh my God, this is great marketing. It's extremely good marketing.
Yeah. And of course, ironically, the way they describe it is how all of medicine should be. Taking, we all need to take a holistic approach. We all need to consider, mind, body, spirit, physical activity, diet, exercise, sleep, stress reduction for everybody and everything we do. But the system doesn't necessarily do that. So then they take that. And when you say you're doing functional medicine, there's no such thing as like that doesn't matter. That just, what that does is it creates a dichotomy and a division and tries to market that the rest of medicine is dysfunctional, I think.
Yeah. And it's also privileged, right? And it doesn't look at these social determinants of health as well. You think about the people that really do need the help with like access to exercise, medicine, and all those things. This is just complete privilege.
It's not the people. Yeah. Yeah, those people can't afford to go see Mark Hyman or functional doctors who just charge cash for. Sometimes they do a good job with just counseling people and talking to them for hours or whatever. But then they also, unfortunately, waste a lot of money and send people down rabbit holes doing inappropriate testing and sometimes even inappropriate therapy for whatever reason. They don't want to follow evidence-based guidance for a lot of that stuff. And I don't know, it's part of their marketing or part of their shtick. I don't get it. But
yeah. I don't get it either. You know, I'd like to talk to you about the Ozempic thing. And it's really more expensive, but I know you're all over it as well, Karl. So, I mean, it's got a lot of news at the moment. And I think it's got it for all the wrong reasons, of course, because everyone's going skinny in Hollywood again and likely using it. But going back to the Dr. Peter Attia post, he was saying things that were invalid and incorrect about this. And even I knew that just as a lay person reading this. And I'm wondering if you can sort of just talk a bit about what the drug is, what it does, and how it can be helpful in the full picture of helping the obesity crisis.
Yeah. So one thing to note, these GLP-1 glucagon-like peptide-1 medicines have been out since 2005 with a drug called Byetta or exenatide. That was a twice daily drug. Gila monsters, they derived it from the saliva. They made a synthetic analog. This is a hormone that gets secreted from your intestine after you eat some usually carbohydrate-containing foods. And it basically augments your pancreas's ability to help with insulin production. In fact, I always like to tell the stories. Back in I don't know if it was the 50s or 60s, they injected glucose into the veins versus had people drink glucose. And to me, I would think that if you injected glucose straight to the veins, your insulin would go higher. What they found is that when they drank it, it actually went higher. And they're like, what? So they called it the incretin effect or intestinal secretion of insulin. And then further down, they found that there's multiple different types of incretins that, it doesn't really matter right now. But these drugs are GLP-1 agonists. Our own GLP-1, when we eat stuff, the half-life is 2 minutes. It's quickly broken down quickly. Whereas these agonists, the first one, that Byetta, the exenatide, twice a day you had to inject it. They've gotten to a point where now it's just once a week. These things are harder to break down. They get into they hit receptors in the brain a little bit better, maybe able to get the serum levels of them a little bit higher without causing as many side effects. There's lots of different things here. Specifically, Ozempic, that came out in 2017. That's semaglutide, kind of one of the newer generations of these. That was made for type 2 diabetes, and these drugs were originally made for type 2 diabetes, but they found they had an appetite suppressant effect. And so they studied these things for obesity. Liraglutide was the first one for obesity specifically. 2014 came out as the name brand Saxenda, but before that it came out as Victoza, a lower dose version of it. So throughout the years, they've made them better and better. Semaglutide is Ozempic, made for type 2 diabetes. In 2017, 2021 is when semaglutide under the brand name Wegovy was approved specifically for obesity. So when people say Ozempic, everybody keeps using,
right.
Again, the media, social media screwed it up because they say Ozempic and it's actually Wegovy that's approved for weight loss.
Wegovy, yeah.
But it is the same exact medicine, the same exact molecule.
The same peptide.
And that's the other thing people don't seem to accept for some reason.
Yeah. The reason I think that happened is multifold, and we can get into this a little bit, but something happened with the Wegovy launch. My brother and I frustrated a lot of obesity doctors. Something about the Wegovy launch went wrong. They screwed up the pen manufacturing. There was a big
the manufacturing plant wasn't functioning right or
exploded.
Something.
I don't know.
Oh my God!
But all of a sudden there was a shortage of Wegovy. That the launch went so well that they couldn't get Wegovy. TikTok around the same time started. There were people starting to use Ozempic specifically because they couldn't get Wegovy, even though Ozempic has been out since 2017.
Yeah. And again, it is the same medicine. If we use the generic names, nobody would know the difference.
Nobody would know.
Semaglutide. So literally, when I write my notes, I will actually say we're going to start semaglutide because what Spencer's alluding to is that cost, coverage, availability stuff. To me, it doesn't matter. If we're using it as indicated for obesity-related complications, type 2 diabetes, it doesn't matter which one. You know what I mean? And they are the same medicine. There's just a dosing difference and a pen difference. But unfortunately, ultimately leading back, and I'll defer back to Spencer to tell the story about how that ultimately led to all sorts of problems.
Yeah. So what happened was, because Wegovy wasn't available, all of a sudden social media just picked up. Elon Musk said I believe he's using Ozempic. All of a sudden the stars started using it. It became a real problem because now people are using it for non-indicated reasons, vanity, weight loss. And this gets into the diet culture. I'm sure Abby would love to have a discussion about the diet culture thing. So people equate us as obesity physicians. You guys are contributing to diet culture. It's like, the hell we are. We're trying to just improve people's adiposity. Despite being like former athletes and caring about, vanity physiques, we're not doing that with patients.
Right.
So because
patients have real obesity with real complications or high risk of those complications that range from cancer to type 2 diabetes and heart disease and stuff. We're treating them to either prevent or mitigate those complications.
Yeah. So then you see this huge influx of social media and vanity weight loss using those like Ozempic because they couldn't even get Wegovy. So they're getting their doctors. What doctors are prescribing this off label? Well, we know some of these docs, and it's kind of like, what the heck is going on here? Yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable. To me, it's not ethical on multiple levels. Although some people might argue, well, it's safe, but if it were dirt cheap and available for everyone and everyone would just be on it, a fair amount of people would be on it. You know what I mean? But that's not the way it is. It's expensive. We know where its risks and benefits start to kind of play out a little bit. And those who have the highest risk get the most benefits. As your risk goes down, the benefits start to even out. And so like we wouldn't take it right now unless it was studied and people was like, hey, actually, you know what? Everyone can benefit from this. And it's 2 cents a day, but that's not the case. Yeah.
And are you finding as well then, because I found something and I sent it to you and I can't remember the name, Joy Love, I think the name of the website was, where these private online sites are now doing compounded versions of this. It's similar to I can buy my hormones and then I can buy...
Which is a whole nother problem because what this did is it opened up the ability of, compounding pharmacies. And again, meds, it's not real doctors treating real patients most of the time. It's med spas, these cliniques, people are paying cash and then they're charging for these compounding, they're making money. And who knows what the heck those are? They might have some form of semaglutide.
It might be.
Because it sounds like people think they're working, but that is not studied, not regulated. I would never take that or prescribe those to my patients. And so we've definitely been involved in some, real media interviews about that.
Tell me about the hammer. What's going on?
It was a thing because it was on the shortage list because of the manufacturing stuff. Semaglutide was on the shortage list. So it gave this loophole to where compounding pharmacies could then also add B12 or something else to it to find these loopholes to get around the patented peptides that these companies have spent billions on, or many hundreds of millions on at least. And so now the hammer's coming down, though. They're not on the shortage list anymore. I just got an email from Missouri saying they will start cracking down specifically on any compounding pharmacies doling this stuff out. I think it's going to keep going throughout the states. And I think that Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk and those big pharma manufacturers, they have lawyers that make millions of dollars a year that will probably... Their lawyers have lawyers.
Excuse me, their lawyers have lawyers. Yeah. And not that we're being big pharma shills about it, but they are the ones who did the research. They are very tightly regulated. We can trust the process more, of how it's done there.
The sterility and all.
And you can trust the product, because the problem with the compounded is you don't know what you're taking.
We don't know. We have no idea. I would never
say. So the commercial stuff comes in a pen. It's very
you keep saying pen. It's like a little trigger thing, is it?
Yeah. The compounders, though, you actually draw it out of a vial. They have these different units that they use. You don't know if you're getting the right concentration. Right. They may do analyses on them and say that it's good. I would never, ever prescribe it to a patient. I would never recommend it to a family member. I personally wouldn't take it. We don't make money from big pharma, because people are like, you're clearly making money from big pharma. I'm like, we don't receive money from these manufacturers.
Other than lunches.
I haven't recently, but maybe last year I got one lunch. But I honestly, it's just from a safety standpoint and then also an efficacy. because they weren't studied, we don't know if the preparation of way they put it in changes the safety of it. I have no idea. I just wouldn't.
Or even how they're getting this stuff. It doesn't make any sense to me. But
from China.
And so China. That's my Trump impression. China. And so the thing is, though, with Wegovy, the idea is that it was for obese people who have a chronic disease that stay on this for life, right? It's not meant to be a quick fix. And I think that I'd like you to talk about what the purpose of Wegovy was for obesity, because I think people are like, oh yeah, they can just lose a couple of pounds and come off it again. And I think that there's a huge misunderstanding about even the therapy that goes along with prescribing this type of medication to patients.
Yeah, it comes down to changing the paradigm of what we think of obesity. And the new paradigm shift is thinking of obesity as a chronic disease. It would be the analogy of like, hey, somebody has hypertension or type 2 diabetes. If they get their numbers down with a medicine, it would be like stopping those anti-hypertensives or anti-diabetes medicines.
The disease process of obesity on the spectrum of an individual's genetic foundation, plus our obesogenic environment, plus all the things that have happened to that person over time. And we can debate the whole set point terminology, but basically the body's biology is working against people all the time. These medications help mitigate that, help change their dietary patterns, change the energy balance intake, lose the weight, which treats the underlying root cause of those obesity complications or adiposity-based diseases like you said, the risk of cancer, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, sleep apnea, knee arthritis. And so it's a chronic progressive relapsing disease process. And so that's why they're studied and approved for long-term chronic use.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then you guys, when you work with it, the whole point is that you're trying to get behavioral change to happen at the same time, right? It doesn't come in independently, does it?
Yeah. So a lot of these patients come in, they already know kind of what they need to do. And they just, not everybody, again, otherwise there'd be no point of behavioral therapy, but a lot of them have tried so many times to lose weight. They've done every single program out there and every single coaching. And there'll people be out there, well, no, they clearly didn't do it right. It's like, no, they did. I've talked to these people and discussed what they've done in the past. Not everybody's done it the best way, but most of them have tried in some sort of form of fashion. Yeah. So they have a good idea. And basically they have these signals from their brain it's like an itch that you just have to scratch. So they're having these signals from the brain in terms of appetite dysregulation and also like reward pathway dysregulation. And that's the type of thing where you're full, but like, I still want pie or cookies or chips or things that are like super yummy tasting. Yeah, so there's a satiety.
Don't we all? But I understand there's no off switch almost.
Yeah. So anyway, the medicine basically tampers that signal, and then they can do what they need to do. And you still do give behavioral therapy with it, though. Ideally, you still help them,
especially the exercise that we're talking about to mitigate. Because with all weight loss therapies, and what they're kind of blowing out of proportion is the potential muscle mass loss whenever you lose weight. And so we want to retain as much of that as possible, because it is important. Muscle is healthy. And so that's where the resistance training, we think we should prioritize that, but all exercise is good for muscles. So, and a lot of people aren't getting a lot of exercise in anyway. So we're always trying to prescribe individualized efforts at that.
Yeah, just the move more scenario, move more than less. But the idea is, the message out there is that with the Wegovy, that we're losing muscle mass because they're losing weight, but because of the drug, but it's not. And when you lose weight, you're going to lose muscle mass anyway, unless you're mitigating that with the exercise. Yeah. And I feel like that was really a really inappropriate post from Peter Attia about that, but you really handled it well, I thought.
Well, and we have a couple podcasts on it that are really good that get into the weeds. This week's is really good with body composition testing.
We had a guy, that's Grant Tinsley guy, PhD, that goes into the nuances of how you measure body composition, because like it shows lean body mass as losses, but was that actual muscle? Was it fluid? There's all sorts of different things that could be going on here that I wouldn't sound the alarm. I think, needs to be studied, but like I wouldn't make these fear-mongering posts the way that he had done. It's a kind of a weird thing, almost like, what's the agenda here? I don't know.
Well, the agenda is attention, isn't it? Often along.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's what social media.
Unfortunately, it seems to be the case. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I know you've got to go soon, Karl, and I want to pick your brains a little bit on the whole menopause topic, because there's a ton of women that will follow this that are menopausal as well. And so, I mean, how are you feeling in general about the conversation about menopause? Have you seen it sort of have an explosion, especially sort of in the social media world where you dabble?
Yeah, I don't see as much in the social media influence on my patients who come in with menopause. In fact, I think because of the whole women's health initiative, over 20 years ago or whatever, since it kind of put the kibosh on female menopausal hormone therapy, I still feel there's still this like clinical sort of inertia that's actually, it's not inertia, it's like holding us back a little bit. So I think more specialists are doing it more. Not a lot of primary care docs maybe have felt as comfortable kind of re-engaging. But so a lot of times in my personal clinic, people aren't coming in because they're having menopausal symptoms. They're coming in for everything else. Their obesity, their diabetes, they're either going through, it's like they're perimenopausal, they're just recently postmenopausal. And as we go through their whole holistic sort of background, it turns out that, they just went through menopause, they're going through menopause, it's very obvious. I do a lot of bone health too, so that gets in there, whatever. And a lot of times it's their sleep. So, the classic hot flashes, poor sleep, they don't feel great, they're not eating well, they want to exercise more, they just aren't feeling great. And ultimately, it turns out that, we say, what? The underlying kind of issue that's going on in your life is menopause. And so then we go over the risk benefits. We talk about the old studies that scared everyone away. And then I talk about a lot of the newer studies and the splitting of hairs of the old study, the whole timing hypothesis, where if you start female hormone therapy earlier on, you don't really have a lot of those risks that were of concern. And in fact, they start to edge more towards the benefits, like for weight, metabolic health, heart disease stuff. Some people who don't have a uterus don't need the progesterone. The progesterone back then maybe had some of the problem with breast cancer and things like that. Then we split the hairs about blood clotting and stroke risks. I personally prescribe a lot of bioidentical patches that are FDA approved. And so they don't have the liver, they don't go through the liver, so they don't increase the clotting factors as much. So there's probably not the stroke risk, and there seems to be more of a cardiovascular, favorability for those. We have newer progesterones, we have micronized progesterone, a bioidentical progesterone, which is probably better too. And then we talk about family history of breast cancer, and we decide. And I'll tell you, more often than not, if that seems to be the case and we go forward with that therapy, the patients are just overly, enjoy it. They feel better. They're sleeping better. Their hot flashes are improved. We talk about, they certainly get bone benefits. They seem to have the other kind of holistic benefits. They do better with their diet, exercise. They have a little bit of weight mitigation. And then ultimately, we might, maybe they also get Wegovy if they are struggling with obesity, and we treat them there. If they have diabetes, we do the other things. That's kind of my approach, basically.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, I suppose I live in a little bit of a bubble because I feel like, we're trying to get the conversation out there, but how do you get, like in Canada, we've got 5 million women in menopause. And how does all these people individually just try and hit those women and say, this is what you're experiencing? Because I think you nailed it. It's the people going to see their doctor about something else and don't even know it's the menopause transition. And I was sort of one of those. And I think it's the missing gap in the knowledge base as well. I think from our side as well as the doctor's side.
We probably do need to do a better job of, and I think there are a lot of OBGYNs who kind of specialize this, endocrinologists who specialize this, who are trying to kind of raise the awareness of, hey, you know what? All right. Yeah, that whole study wasn't as bad as we thought. There's actually a lot of benefits that we need to rediscuss with people. I think we need to raise awareness, just like we need to raise awareness of obesity and how complex that disease is. I think we need to raise awareness because, a lot of people do great through menopause. They don't need anything, right? But then females need to know that, what to expect, maybe what things to consider, what things to talk to their doctors about. And so they, people just need to. I think, maybe we forgot about menopause or something.
We did. We definitely did. So and I feel like when you go to your doctor at the age of 35, that you should just get a little handout. There you go. This is coming. Just know about it. Even just knowing about it can be helpful.
It's not wrong. Right? Yeah, maybe we do need to do that. Just, public awareness campaigns. I think, and people are working on that, but I think, all of us need to do a little bit better job of that.
I think primary care needs to know.
Well,
they don't have training. I don't
They
think,
should.
right?
They
Specialists, and this is the thing, healthcare, this is one of my passions. Healthcare needs to improve our support for primary care, the front lines. Specialists need to support primary care, not just take them into our own little silos. I could go on forever for this, but this is one of my passions. We just do it wrong. And so, we need to do better about supporting our primary care friends. They're the ones on the front lines.
And they're the ones who are getting, I really love doctors, and I very rarely have anything bad to say about them, because every single time I've been to a primary care provider, I've always got really good care, but they don't know what they don't know, is what I think. Right. And if they don't know what menopause is, then they're going to treat me for my migraines, or they're going to treat me for my joint pain or whatever, right? Yeah. And so I think it's just a big knowledge gap that I see,
And so certainly there's nothing wrong with having them come see, a specialist who might be a little bit more comfortable in doing that. But then, through that, we need more education. We need the awareness to even do that. So,
Yeah, for sure. All right, listen, I know I've took up your time, and I know you've got to go and see patients. Spencer keeps putting his kids in front of me, and you keep putting your patients before me, but it's fine. It's fine.
Well, we got to get you guys back on, because I'll tell you what, some of our most popular podcasts were with you guys. So the Quack Watch team.
That was so good. And you know what? I said to Abby, I'm going on with them, and I just didn't invite her. I just was so mean.
Oh, no.
No, he's fine. I am really mean. But let's come back on. Yeah, let's do a round 2, and we'll bring some really good examples. Perfect. Thank you guys for coming on. Take care. Keep doing good stuff.
Bye.
Will do. Bye. Thanks.
Bye for now. See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you like what you hear, then why not subscribe to this podcast and leave me a review? You see, when you do this, it helps to raise the profile of my show and attract new listeners. And it also allows me to continue to deliver valuable content with great guests. And in return for you doing that, I will send you my 12-week core-focused program called Abs on Fire as a thank you. Simply drop me an email at amanda@amandasteve.com, and I'll wing that your way. Bye.